When did you first begin writing short stories and poetry?
When I was a small child, my mom gave me a journal, and my first journal was a trip that we took to New Mexico. And I wrote down everything that we did each day. And after that, my journals became prayer journals where I wrote down Bible verses and I talked to God. And in 4th grade, I had a teacher who taught us creative writing, and I started writing poetry. And in 6th grade, we had to keep a journal for our English class, and I've been keeping journals my whole life, so that was really boring. So I was like, can I write short stories instead? And so every week was an installment, and I had about like 6 stories going at the same time. So I've still got the book at home. There's, a chapter of one book, and then a chapter of another, and a chapter of another, and then I would go back to the first book and write a second chapter. And so my teacher read all these stories for me, and it felt, I don't know, like I had an audience. So that was when I started writing fiction.
Now, is that one of your first journals here?
No, this is like from 2003, but it's well loved, used all the way to the last page. I have so many of these journals, and I keep them out on display in my house because they're special.
Now, you started writing for school assignments, and you wrote down prayers, and has that evolved? What do you find yourself writing about as you grow older, and why?
I quit writing for a long time, and then I took a class that was for writing for children. I'm not really sure. I think it's because I had little children and I wasn't doing anything and felt uninspired. And so I took this class, and I had a friend who encouraged me. This will be my thing at the end. My encouragement to everyone is she told me just to write something every day, even if it wasn't good. And so, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or something, I started writing a little bit every day. And then since then, for inspiration, I don't know, I get bored and I like to do stuff. And so I'll come up with a series of something I'm interested in. I've done a series on flower meanings because I read a book.
The Language of Flowers?
Yeah, The Language of Flowers. And in the book, they had a dictionary of what flowers meant. Loved it. So then I wrote a whole series of poems on flowers based on their meanings. I've done a series of personified vegetables. I've done a series on the Stations of the Cross. I've done, I don't know, I've done a whole lot of Greek mythology. Anyway, so I would research and, hone in on that. And, anyways, I'm inspired by lots of things. That might be another question.
I was going to ask if you ever collaborate with other writers or artists, or do you mainly do things just for you?
Mostly I do things for myself, but like I said, I like to have fun and play and do different things and get bored. So I definitely have collaborated with writing and art. I've written stories with friends. I will have like a poem starter, like a first line, and send it to a bunch of my friends and have them all write the next line, and then I'll write the next line, and I'll compare and see how different the poems all turned out based on what the other person contributed. I had one friend who, music inspires me, and I brought a thing for that. I had a friend who they would make a playlist of music on Spotify, and I would write to it, and then I would make a playlist, and they would write to that. So we were writing to music that we wouldn't have chosen for ourselves. So I don't remember the question.
It's, do you ever collaborate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and I brought like an art that's collaborative. We haven't talked about my art yet, but like for instance, this piece. Yeah, I think you can see it. I did both of these drawings, and then a friend drew on top of it the lines, and they were helping me learn more about the contours of the face. Mostly I draw just kind of instinctually, not with a lot of training. And it turned out to be beautiful, and I kept it that way. I've got other pieces of art where I drew a part and then I passed it on to a friend, and they do the part and passed it on to another friend, and then it ended up with a whole piece of art. Anyways, so yeah, I've got at least 2 pieces framed in my house that were done by 3 people instead of just me.
Have you ever entered any competitions through the years? Have you tried that?
I think I won like an honorable mention in one competition in high school because my teacher entered me into the competition. So I've never entered myself in competitions.
Have you written for a publication, and did you like that? Did you enjoy that experience?
Yes. Yes, it's different. I've written nonfiction for maybe 3 or 4 like blogs, and I was employed for several years writing a blog for a law firm. It can be challenging to have a time. Oh, and I wrote theater reviews. It can be challenging because you have an assignment that you might not have picked for yourself and a deadline, but that's fun. It's fun. It's different, and I enjoyed that as well as writing for myself.
You've included images you've created with your writing at times, photographs, illustrations, and I've always wondered which came first. Was it the image or was it the writing?
Well, here. Right, I brought a thing for that as well. Let's see. I first started with art again. I did art in middle school and then none after that. And I first started doing art again when a friend gave me a journal during a period of depression in my life. And I didn't have words to say, but I would just draw whatever I felt. And nobody had to see it. It could be stick figures, which it was. So I started back to art that way. And then this was one of my writing projects because I was bored and I wanted something to do. And my friend had given me this book by Jason Mraz called 1,000 Things. And there are all these photographs, Polaroids that he had taken. And there's a blank page next to every Polaroid. And I was like, oh, I should write a poem for each of these pictures. So I spent a long time just only writing poetry by looking at the pictures somebody else had taken and seeing what they made me feel. And I think that I was already taking photographs and had like a huge Instagram page of photographs that I was taking, again, to help with depression. It was, I looked for something beautiful around me, no matter how I was feeling. I tried to look around and be like, what's beautiful? And then I would capture it on film. So I was already taking pictures. So after this exercise with the Mraz photography book, I sort of had trained myself how to write to photographs. So the photographs come first is the answer to the question in what I'm doing now as an artist. I look at the photographs and think about my day and what's happened and what I'm feeling, and then I do a mashup of all of that together.
So you've created quite a few things over the years. You've got a really large collection. You've got photographs, you've got sketches, you've got poems, you've got short stories. These various forms of creative expression, they've just grown and grown. You've kind of covered this a little bit already, but what keeps you inspired to keep creating? Because this has been going on for a long time, and it's
a long
going.
time. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I have a tattoo on my back of a willow tree, and it's based on a poem that I wrote a long time ago. I got it in my early 30s, my first tattoo, and what it means to me is it was embracing the idea that I am an artist. That's who I am. I'm a poet. I'm an artist. I don't need to have a publisher tell me you're good enough to make me be, it's just who I am. And so I've created through interior design and through fashion and through food. My whole life, even the periods where I wasn't doing art or writing, I've always been an artist, and I think I always will be. So I'm always inspired.
Can you share some examples with us and kind of walk us through how they were created from concept to the finish?
Ooh, I'm going to try. That's a tough one. Let's see. One thing I hadn't showed you yet that I brought as a Christmas present this year. It's a Pink Floyd album.
Oh, wow.
Uma Guma. This is an unfinished project, and I may never finish it, but I listened to this album one day, and I was just enthralled. And the song titles are like, they're poetry. A saucer full of secrets. Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a Pict. The Grand Vizier's Garden Party. I was so inspired by these song titles that I was like, I'm going to write a book! And every chapter was going to be based on the chapters, the songs in the order that they come on the album. So I've always wanted a copy of that album, and I got one for Christmas. So that is an example of the process of art that I would do. So for the short story, I just started fleshing out what I wanted, who the characters were, what I wanted to happen. But I don't want to do that much because I really haven't finished any books. I just have a bunch of unfinished books. I brought both some art and some poetry. I've got 3 kinds of art here. The art that I've been doing most recently started because I have a new job, and it's a government job. There's downtime sometimes. And during the downtime, I was like, what am I going to do? I'm bored. And I had office paper and highlighters and Sharpies. And so I started doing these marker girls. And so I have a Pinterest board that I started called Faces, and anytime I saw a face or an image that was inspiring, I would just put it in the board. And that day, if I had time to draw, I would think, what am I feeling? And then I would look through all the pictures and see one that emoted what I was feeling. So it was kind of like a journal. And then I would create art just using these highlighters and office paper. And then I did some using the really cheap, came with the computer art program on my office computer. So those I would draw, I might partially color, then I would send them to myself and just play with it. I'd never used the software before, but part of what my job is exploring all the software that we have and learning how to use it without being taught. So I did that with the art stuff too. And I've also done watercolors. I have a friend who's a very talented watercolorist, and she gives me gifts of palettes and brushes. So this is on real paper, and I've done some watercolors as well once I got into the style. Those are also on Instagram, and I consider them multimedia. Every girl that I've posted has a song that I've chosen to go with her that I was listening to when I drew her, or that I thought, what does she make me feel? And then found a song to go with it. And they all have titles, which are tiny, tiny poems. And then their art. So there's 3 things that I'm passionate about all into one. And then the other art that I do is with the photographs. And so I brought just a couple of, it was hard for me to, this was fun. I have never seen these photographs in real life before, only on the camera. I've never printed out any of the photos that I've been taking for all these years. They're just on the camera. I printed out a couple that I could access. Most of them are buried from forever ago, but there's a butterfly. Alright, so let me look on my phone and I'll see if I can find the poem to go with the butterfly.
I was going to say, did they have poems with each one?
Yes, each of these has a poem. So here's the butterfly's poem. Ugh. Okay, hang on. There it is. Alright. So here's the butterfly. Boop. I guess it's September when I weed the ruins of summer, sniff ground cover before I tug roots. Enduring time, profuse, redolent, I regard you. Run my fingers over the freckles of the earth, remembering caterpillars in my parsley. So, this was written really because, like, there's the butterfly that came from the caterpillars that were absolutely gobbling up my parsley in my garden this year, and it's like I was having to pick them off. And anyway, so I saw the butterfly and I was like, well, there it is. The season's changed. The caterpillars have grown into butterflies and my summer garden is pretty much gone. But the one thing that was still there was the thyme, which was buried like in the ground instead of in a pot, and it was still alive. So mostly I write about just ordinary everyday things that are that I see or that happen, and I let the pictures inspire me. I was going to see if any of these others are accessible. It's hard to find. All right, here's one other poem that I wrote recently. This one I photo edited. There it is. I do sometimes take my photos and do like double exposures after the fact and, you know, do photo editing, which is art, I think. So some of my photos are that kind of art and some are just art as photography. That one, the poem is this. Let's see if I can show you the picture while I read it, maybe. You and I, we dwelled in the secret place, wove shelter from shadow, whispered the language of prayers in public like spells. In dim quarters, brazen, incoherent, songs shrieked out of us, and we understood each other's strange things. This one, it kind of goes with the image in that when I looked at the image, it was just magical, like magic. And the person that I wrote it for, I had spent a lot of time at this particular place that the photo was taken, and I was about to see her, and I wanted to say something to her, and the way that I had to say it was through poetry. So that's how that one was. It was what was going on in my life at that moment, memories that I had, and then what the image made me think and feel. So there's a couple of those. Like I said, it was hard to print these because I take so many photos. Finding them in my phone is challenging.
Well, as I said, you've been creating for a long time, for years, and you find inspiration in so many different ways. Since you have this source of creativity that has gone on and on, I just wondered, do you have any words of encouragement for those who may just be starting out, who want to try creative writing for the first time, photography for the first time, or art for the first time?
Well, like I said, my first jaunt back into drawing after all those years, I drew stuff like this. You see that? Wow, so great. A stick figure. It's so hard to pick. I already mentioned that one of my friends told me to just write every day, and something creative, don't worry about what it is, if it's good, if you would ever want to show it to somebody. It's really the practice. So I practiced drawing, and then it became something that I was like pretty good at. Not embarrassed of what I did. I've practiced writing for years and years and years. Some of the things are things I'd want to share, some aren't. But the more I do it, the more natural it becomes. And I personally create for myself. Now, not every artist might have the same answer, but most of my art is therapeutic, and I create to help me process my world. And so if that's how you're thinking, who cares if it's good, or whatever. Go for it.
Thank you for sharing your time and your talents with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.